Welcome to Decoding Leadership, where we break down the elements of humane and effective leadership. I'm your host, Jade Rubick. Today's topic is macho leadership and bro culture. We're going to talk about how to act in situations when you're in bro culture, how to recognize when you are in a macho environment, and some things you can do to respond when you're a leader in that type of a situation. First of all, let's talk a little bit about how to know you're dealing with a macho culture. Often this is just something you feel. You have this sense of, yeah, this is totally a place where macho behavior is rewarded. Some things that may be indicators, you may see a lot of war metaphors, some very aggressive, tough language. You will often see a lot of jockeying or trying to look tough. Sometimes there's a need to criticize others to look good. And you'll sometimes see the way that the groups act is that everybody is in full agreement because nobody wants to stick out. And so you'll often see just everybody goes along with what the leader says, or you'll see people really fighting and sniping over everything because of all of the jockeying and trying to look tough. A sign that you're dealing with a really toxic example of this is when you see a lot of sexist behavior or a lot of double standards in place where people are not evaluated by the outcomes that they produce, but the aggressive way that they do it. So, what is wrong with a macho environment? What is wrong with bro culture? I would say that being macho or bro-ish is not always a bad thing. There are some advantages to like aggressive or risk-taking behavior in a business environment. But there are trade-offs in every way of acting. You can be too timid as well, or you can be overly analytical. All of these things have trade-offs. But what I've seen be particularly bad about macho behavior is that it often encourages a sort of monoculture. And I really think leaders have to watch out for monoculture because when you're in an environment where everybody is afraid to think in a different way or afraid to show up in a different way, you automatically make the contributions of some people less valuable. And you lead everybody to just act in a very artificial way. And you don't really get the benefit of everybody's best critiques, everybody's best decision making. And you'll also cause a lot of talented people to leave your organization. So it's really not best for the business. It's not best for the individuals involved. And it can be very harmful. You will see macho behavior in a lot of places. And I think it develops for a couple of reasons. One reason is that people often have stereotyped views of leadership. And so they interpret aggressive behavior as leadership behavior. And, that's kind of understandable, but it does result in people having a very limited perspective of what a leader does. And they can misinterpret behavior that doesn't look like that type of behavior as not being leadership-like. People naturally emulate their leaders. I noticed this first when I was watching a documentary on Enron. The leadership there started emulating the CEO. They were dressing the same. They were acting the same. It's a normal thing to happen for humans. We naturally emulate our leaders. We talk like them. We copy the way they talk, their language. It is something that naturally happens. But there's another level of this where if only a particular type of behavior is rewarded, so for example, if the CEO only values people who produce results in a very aggressive way, or if people that only talk in a very aggressive way are rewarded, everyone will act that way. You will hire for those type of traits. You will overlook people that are very effective, maybe even more effective, but cannot produce results in this particular filter that you're looking for. And it becomes very self-reinforcing so that you get this kind of monoculture in leadership, and it can be quite harmful. What do you do when you are operating as a leader in a kind of macho culture? Often, honestly, there is not that much you can do. You can try to influence it sometimes, but it may be something that is not under your control. And so, what I generally do is I try to assess what is the level of influence I can have in this situation. If you are working with a leader that is the person setting the standards, and you believe that they have some amount of self-awareness and desire to create like a high performing work culture, you might be able to say, hey, I'm observing this behavior and I don't really think it's compatible with what you're wanting out of this company. I think it's getting in the way. I saw this person not get rewarded for doing really good work. But often I've found that you have to play this dumb game. And so, what I've generally found in that case is that you have to translate your language into overly aggressive terms. And one funny thing you can use LLMs for, like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, is you can actually just translate everything into like super bro-ish language. One prompt I used once is, I have a status update. I'd like you to make sound super macho, like really, really aggressive, extra machismo. And I gave it this little update that was like, hey, the Slack integration project is going to be delayed. We chose to push it back 2 weeks because an urgent request came in from sales, and we decided that was more important. It's going to be potentially the biggest deal of the quarter. And as a result, the Slack integration will be available at the end of September. And what came back is like, listen up, team. The Slack integration project is taking a hit. We made the call to push it back by 2 weeks. Why? Because an urgent request came in from sales, and supporting our biggest deal of the quarter takes top priority. This decision wasn't up for debate. We're throwing everything we've got to crush this deal. It's kind of dumb. Honestly, that's how I judgmentally think of it. But there are some environments where that type of language is the only language that will really get heard. And if you don't act in that way, people aren't going to listen to you. It's kind of silly, but it is a reality sometimes. Another thing you can do is make sure that you translate other people's behavior into language the bros can understand. So you can advocate for other people. You will observe, if you're a careful observer, other people being criticized or punished because they're not acting the way they should act, or the way that leadership looks like to people that see things through these bro lenses. And so sometimes you have to do translation for other people as well. One thing I have found effective sometimes is to choose a motto. People don't really get sometimes just like how impactful and influential language can be. And sometimes you can find like a motto or a saying that people remember. So, for example, you can say something like, I don't care how people do it, I care about the results. It sounds good, right? It also gives people freedom in how they produce those results. And so sometimes you can create space for other people, or create space, a little bit of space within a bro culture, to open it up for people. If it's bad enough, you can leave. I did this once at a company. I actually really liked the people working there, but weirdly, it had a very macho culture. And I started to observe that they were treating the women in this company just way worse than the men. it became really obvious. Like basically there was always criticism and scrutiny for the women in the company in leadership positions. And there was a lot more space for making mistakes and learning for men. Now, that's a very common thing, even in a place where people are like looking out for these things. In some places, it's really bad. And for me, it was just such a clear pattern there that I couldn't be a part of it. I just didn't feel good about it. And when that's the case, you can often leave. Some people don't have that sort of flexibility, but that is a valid option sometimes. But when you are within bro culture or a macho culture, what are some things that you can do to shape that? Ultimately, a lot of this comes from the top. And so the best thing you can do is you can influence the person at the top. And if they are open to it, try to change the examples that are coming from the top. You can reward and encourage more neutral use of language. You can try to bring in a more diverse set of leadership styles into your team. You can praise people who bring up hard information or counter the prevailing narrative. It's typical leadership work. You need to reinforce and structure and improve and push things in the direction that you want them to go. So, those are a few thoughts about macho culture, bro leadership. I would really love to hear from everyone else what sort of experiences they've had, what's they've found effective. Thank you.